Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about Kriya Yoga and Kundalini Shakti. So in Kriya Yoga and other yogic paths, often people talk about Kundalini. And usually when people talk about Kundalini, they're talking about energy that is rising up from the base of the spine to the upper centers, the upper chakras. In particular, it is said that the Kundalini is in the Muladhara chakra area. And as it becomes awakened, it starts to move its way up through the spine, all the way up to the Sahasrara, this chakra in the top of the head area. And when people are having a Kundalini activation, normally they experience a series of feelings, and then they experience this expansion of consciousness. And certainly in yogic lore, this experience of this expansion, getting into a superconscious state, sometimes called samadhi. And so folks who have developed spiritually often talk about this sort of Kundalini rising. And the Shakti in there is a reference to Shiva, and Shakti are a representation of the primordial essence and the primordial energy working together to raise the consciousness of the disciple to have this transcendence through their spiritual practice. And in Kriya Yoga, it is often said that the energy, what Lahiri Mahashaya used to say, is that the prana was rising. So it's the experience of having the prana moving up the spine to the upper centers into an experience of superconsciousness. But there are a number of things that can happen when people start to do yogic practices, including Kriya Yoga, is that they can start to experience what they call Kundalini syndrome. And so this is something that Gopi Krishna originally talked about. If you've ever read some of his books where he talks about, his experience, his particular meditation technique was to be aware of the top of his head and then just to be concentrating there. And eventually what happened is he experienced this flow of inner energies moving up his spine, and he got into this very blissful, expansive state. However, as a result, it was very intense, and it never really, it didn't cease. And so it became more of an impediment for him in his regular life, because he was experiencing this situation where he was no longer able to function practically in the world, where he was spaced out all the time, where he had health issues, where he was experiencing, physical, emotional pain, and so on. And so that's what we talk about when we talk about a Kundalini syndrome. And often what can happen when people start to do yogic practices is that things start to happen to them, and they might feel this boost, right? Where they may feel this sort of, these energies moving up their spine. They may feel an expansion, but they can also start to feel that it feels a bit imbalanced. And the reason for that is that once those internal energies start to move, they can often run into impediments. And these impediments have been talked about in different yogic perspectives in different ways. One of the things that people talk about is samskaras, karmic seed tendencies lodged in the chakras, the energy centers. And so when the energy is trying to rise and it runs into an impediment, an unresolved karmic seed, if you will, then there is a congestion. The energy gets stuck, if you will, and it doesn't continue to flow. It can start to feel this, like you have this pressure in different parts of your body. And it's more than just the physical body. It's the energy system, if you will. And so many people experience this, and I've talked to many people from different meditation traditions who have expressed, the variety of Kundalini syndrome symptoms and what can they do about it, that kind of thing. So there are different kinds of approaches to deal with that situation. When the energy starts to get activated, when the Kundalini starts to flow, if you will, upwards, some folks that are more traditional yoga, they take more of a bhakti yoga approach, which has to do with devotion. And so for them, it is about surrender, right? So one of the particular ways of dealing with those congested energy flows, when the energy is trying to move, but it runs into some kind of impediment in the energetic architecture, is this sense of surrender. And people can have this in terms of a devotion in their path, right? So they might have a particular ishta, which means a spiritual ideal that they either pray to or worship or whatever. And that ishta they can direct their devotion to, and to surrender to it. So this is one of the ways that, a particular method for helping to allow the energies to resolve, if you will, so that things can flow more harmoniously. And certainly that's more of a bhakti type of path, and it takes some effort, but you can get results with that. The other one is within Kriya Yoga itself, and that's why Kriya Yoga is such an effective methodology for doing spiritual development, is because it uses this process of Om Japa, right, cleaning out the chakras, if you will, and when the energies tend to get stuck or stagnant or congested in there, doing the Om Japa can really help to bring out a resolution and increase energy flows. So that's from the Kriya Yoga perspective, as a way of helping to deal with Kundalini syndrome issues. But there's another way as well, which is really, really effective, and it comes from Taoist internal alchemy, and this is the inner smile. Now, the inner smile is a foundational Taoist internal alchemy practice that is really, variations of it are practices in many different types of cultures, right? So the inner smile really is about tuning in with what you're experiencing and then radiating an internal smile to it, to accept that particular feeling as it is. Now, normally when we are doing yogic types of practices and we run into challenges, often people take the perspective that we need to destroy the impediments, right? Or we need to get rid of it, whatever it is, like the concept of karmic seeds, where you want to burn up your karmic seeds in some kind of yogic fire, right? That kind of thing. It's very much about destroying and removing obstacles, but that sets a situation of separation. You're separating yourself from your internal experience and trying to transcend it, and that is not as effective as integrating your internal experience, right? And ultimately, when one gets into higher levels of meditation and one starts to go beyond the senses, if you will, and start to want to have these expansive states of consciousness, one has to let go and allow things to integrate. So trying to control the life force through a process of pranayama, life force control, and trying to micromanage things inside of yourself, or to repress them or get rid of them, can only take you so far. Eventually you need to allow things to integrate, because the integration is really what the higher levels of spiritual development are about. You want to integrate. So when you're doing Kriya Yoga, doing Om Japa can help to some degree, but it's more the perspective that you take when you're doing that. If the perspective is, I need to destroy my karmic seeds and burn them in the fire, and I want to be free from karma and all this kind of thing, you're coming from a negative perspective, which is about separation. What you want to do is to embrace and integrate. That is a real essence in spirituality, right? So you can run into challenging things, but when you engage in a process where you allow integration to happen, right, then things will start to integrate, and there will be internal transformation, right? You want everything within you to change. You don't want to just say, this is the sin, this is bad, this is karma, I'm getting rid of that. You say, great, I embrace you, and let's open things up so that you can transform into a higher form of energy, if you will, right? Into a higher form of feeling, so that there's an integration that happens. And so the inner smile in Taoist internal alchemy is a real foundational and at the same time very profound practice. And basically what it is you're just tuning into what you feel, smiling into it, accepting it fully for what it is, and then giving it your consent for it to change, right? Now that might not sound like much, but if you try that very simple process, you will realize that it has a profound effect. So while you can have dealing with Kundalini issues, you can take different approaches, right? The Bhakti path, right, which is totally fine. The Kriya Yoga path, which is also good, right, can provide, helping to clear out the energy system through, Om Japa and associated practices. But when you engage the inner smile, and you can add it to any of those, you get this extremely powerful and simple practice that has great transformational impact, right? It is so powerful, so potent. And at Modern Kriya, our website, modernkriya.com, that's what we teach as a foundation of Taoist internal alchemy. So we teach Kriya Yoga, right, in the Panchanan Bhattacharya lineage of Kriya Yoga. The traditional Kriya Yoga that it was taught by Lahiri Baba to Panchananji, and passed down and kept in its various sort of pure form. And we also teach Taoist internal alchemy, which you can apply to Kriya Yoga with things like the inner smile and get really, really good results. And in particular, if you've been struggling, you don't even need to be doing spiritual practices, but something happened and you get this energy stuck in you, these energy flows that are creating challenges for you, and I don't know how to resolve it, right? So one of the ways is the inner smile, right? So we do have a video about the inner smile on our website, modernkriya.com, so check that out. The other thing is that when you are doing yoga practices, like Kriya Yoga or other kinds of yoga, if you engage the inner smile, it really helps to harmonize the development as the energy starts to flow. So when you do that from the get-go, you're putting your mindful awareness on the practices that you're doing, and you're more likely to have a harmonious transformation than trying to, force your energy to move in this direction, to push it, to pull it, whatever it is. You want to engage your inner practice, but open yourself up so that things can flow harmoniously, that if there are impediments, they will resolve spontaneously, because that's what you want, is a harmonious spiritual development rather than an erratic, chaotic development. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.